Hey everyone, welcome to this video. So here is the topic for today. We'll be taking it at the useful JavaScript array methods that are not commonly used. So we have a whole lot of JavaScript methods, but there are some methods I think that they are very useful, but I don't really see so many people using them. And these are the methods that I actually want to bring to you today. So I actually have about 10 of them in numbers, and there are chances that you may already know some of this JavaScript array methods. So I actually divided this video into timestamps. So if you actually come across the one that you know already, skip to the next part and just navigate through the JavaScript method that you think is actually new to you. And I hope you enjoyed this video. So, all right, let's get started. So over here we have our toLocaleString, and what this does is that it turns an entire array into a string. Now, it actually turns every value inside of the array into a string, but you need to be careful while using this because for some objects that cannot really be stringified, it might just give you a string of objects. But let's just see this and see how we can go about this. So let's console.log this, so we can say console.log, and let's use a number array here. So we'll say number array dot toLocaleString, and what it's going to give to us is that it's going to take all the values of this array, all the elements of this array, and make them to be a single string actually. So let me open my terminal and then we'll see what happens. Let me run this now. All right, so you can see what's going on here right now, that we actually just have this to be just like a string. And I know that we might actually say that, oh, this is not really a string. It still looks like an array over here. But if you observe, we don't really have the square brackets over here. But let's make this very clear. And if we should come over here now, and I should say const, let me call this const A, and I put this over here, then if I should say type of A, and I save this now, we can see that the type of A is now a string. It's not really an array object anymore. It's now a string at this point in time. So we can see we've turned all of these into a string, but we can actually do more with this, because if, for instance, we have, instead of just having numbers in here that we can just make to become a string, we can also have a date in here. So we can actually say new date, and when we save this over here and we actually console.log A and not the type of A, we console.log A, we can see that we have everything in here as a string, and then we have today's dates and the time of recording this video over here basically. So this is just basically how the toLocaleString works. So let's get over to the next array method. So the next array method that we have over here is actually the Array.from method. So this simply means that we can actually create an array from a certain string. So let's say that we already have, let me remove this date over here. So we already have a string here, and this string is actually a string of 1 to 3, and we want to create an array out of the string. All we need to do over here is to just come over here, that we say the string. In this case, our string is the string A, because we've actually done that. So we can say array, we can actually say array.from, and what we just need to do is to put A inside of here. So if I should console.log this value now, I got that, then I say console.log, and I console.log this particular guy. Let me comment this one up there. So you can see that we actually have an array of each of the string in that string itself, like each of the values in the string. So we can see that we have the 1 to be an element, we have the comma, we have 2, we have the comma, we have 3, we have the comma. So this is actually useful when you want to turn a particular string into an array. So we can actually just say that we have a string over here, and we can say this is a sample text. And when I save this, we can see the entirety of the this is a sample text had actually become a string over here. And this is basically what array.string could be used for. Now, the array.string could also do something else again. So it's not just taking a string, but it's actually taking any item that is iterable. And we also know that array in itself is also iterable. So what we need to do now is to put in an array over here. Let's say we have an array of 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. And if I should save this, we're not really going to see any difference in here. But this is where things start becoming interesting, because we can actually manipulate an already existing array to create a new instance over here. So we can actually say that we want to go this way, and what we want to say is that in each of them, this is going to be like an arrow function over here. So let's just say we have like, let's call it x for now, and let's say we'll create an arrow function. Now I can just say that x, in this case, I want to return, and I'm going to be using this, I want to return that is the exact value, and I just want to append a string of date to it. So for me to do that now, I can then come around here, and I would just going to use this variable over here, then I'll say x over here, then I'll go day. So, and if I should save this now, you can see what we have over here. From this array over here, we have 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, and 5 days, and so on and so forth. So one other thing that we can actually do is that we can actually take this particular array over here, make this a variable. Let me call this const b, make this a variable over here. Then we'll just come over here, put b, and we have the same thing happening in there. But the good thing here is that we can actually create a new instance of an array. This is actually creating a new instance of an array, because it is not really it's not actually manipulating the original array. It's creating a new instance of an array. So to prove that, I can come over here and I can say console.log b over here. And you can see that the original array remains unaltered. So we still have our original array, and whenever we use the Array.from, it creates a new instance of the array. So this could come in handy in a situation whereby we want to perform some certain operations that would normally alter the original array. So instead of altering the original array, or instead of using the spread operator to create a new instance of that same array, we can actually use the Array.from to create a new instance of a specific array. So that is where this could also come in useful as well. So another useful array method again is the Array.flat. This array method is actually super useful. Let's take, for instance, that let me comment that out, and let me say Array.flat. So let's take, for instance, that we have a kind of a nested array, like we have an array in an array in an array, and there is a point in time whereby we wish that all this nested array is just actually one single array, and every item is just so flat in there. The Array.flat can do just that, as the name implies. So let me go ahead and comment out all these things that we have here. This is actually meant to be flat. So over here, what I'm going to do here is to create a new variable. I'm going to call this nested array, and that is going to be equal to, I'm just going to create a quick nested array. So we'll say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then I have a nested array in there. Then in that nested array, I have a, that has to be a string. So we have a, then we have a string of b, then we have a string of C. So the fourth item in this nested array happens to be another array again. So this is another array in the array. So we can just say, in this case, I'm just going to be putting some random values over here. So let's say console.log, and I say nested array. And if I should save this now, you can see, just like we've written this over here, this is actually a nested array. So what if I want all these particular values, all of the values, to actually appear, but within just one array? Now, this is where the Array.flat comes into play. So if I should say nested array.flat here and I save this now, you could see that this ABC that used to be with an array inside of this array is now part of the parent array itself. And that you can notice that this other array here remains untouched. So the question would be, what if we want even this array over here to actually be part of the major part, the root array itself? If we want this array to still be a part of the root array, so there's still a way to do that, because the Array.flat method also accepts a property which is actually known as the depth. So by default, the depth of the array is basically 1. But if I should save this, we can see that we have the same results over here. But if I should say the depth of the array should be 2 over here, and we save this, you can see that every single item of the nested array are coming together to become one single array over there. So even if we have an array with a depth of 50, a depth of 100, as long as we can specify the depth of that particular array, we can just have one single flat array over here. So the next array method that I want to talk about now is the Array.flatMap. So the Array.flatMap is like using the Array.map and using the Array.flat together. So let's just see how that works. So let's go to the next one. Over here, I'll say flatMap. So flatMap over here. So how does this work? So I'm going to be using the same array over here, and we all know the way map works. Okay, I don't need to declare this again. So we all know the way map actually works, that we can just use it to manipulate some things within our array. So in this case now, I actually want to manipulate this. I want a situation where we have the number 2 or where we have the number 3. We actually would just replace that with another value. So what I'm going to do in this case is that I would say that the nested, I'm going to declare this in a variable, and I will call this const C, and I would say that should be equal to the nested array dot flatMap, and what I need to do here, I'm going to call this, I'm just going to call this X. So I'm going to use my arrow function here. So in this case, I'm going to say that where X in this case is equal to any of this thing here. So I can say that when X is equal to 2 or when it's equal to 1. So let's say when X is equal to 3, for instance, when X is equal to 3, I want this to actually return another array. So we already know that if this is actually returning another array, ordinarily it's going to appear to be more like adding one array here, and I'm going to call this I'm going to make this to be a string of capital letters. You get, so that's what I'm going to make it to be, but this is how it's meant to appear. But because if I'm using the flat map now, it's not going to appear like this, but instead it is going to appear just like this over here. So I'm just going to do this so we can actually see this in action. So let me uncomment this and let me take this back to 3. So in this case, I just want this to be the AAA, and probably we have the BBB over here. So, but if it is not equal to 3, then just just return X back. So we're just going to put X back over here. So this is just the little expression that I have over here. And if I should console.log C now, we're going to see what we have. So console.log C, and when I save this, I need to remove this console.log here. So when I save this now, you can see that instead of having 3 over here, like we have originally here, we're now having the AAA and we're having the BBB. But we are not having them in an array because we are actually using the flats and the map together, basically. Meanwhile, if we just use only the map to do this, we're going to see this in an array itself. So this is basically what the flat map can also do. And also take note that over here, we are actually having this other array here this is the ABC array, was also flattened as well. So you can just simply say that the flat map is a combination of the map method and the flatten method together. So the next method that I'm having over here is actually the Array.at. So the Array.at is actually kind of getting much more popular because according to the last state of JavaScript, there were actually more people using the Array.at. But let me know if you have ever used the Array.at method in the comments below. But I'm going to be talking about it here anyways. So the Array.at is actually very useful. So let's go over here. Now call this. So this is basically how this method is written. So what the Array.at does is that it can actually select a specific element of an array based on the index. And we'll probably say that, oh, we can always do this, like specify the index in the square bracket and it returns the actual element in that particular index for you. That's great, but the Array.at actually comes with much more functionality than just doing that. And let's just see how that works. So I'm still going to be using this particular array to illustrate this. So in this case, I would be saying that console.log the nested array. So in this case now we can see that this has the index of 0, this has the index of 2, this has the index of 3, and this here, all of these here has the index of 4 basically. So if I should say that I want the array of the index of 4, for example, it's going to return okay, I think we don't have 4 there, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, my bad. So we have this here, and when we do that, we can see that we have this particular array coming up over there. So if we say we need the index of 0, for instance, we can see that we have 1 coming because 1 is of the index of 0. But here is the thing, this is where Array.at comes in. Let's say that, let me simplify this array so we can actually understand what I'm saying better. So let's say we have AAA here, and we have BBB, and then we have CCC, and then we have CCC. So let's take, for example, you can see the index of 0 is definitely AAA. So let's take, for example, now that we actually want to get the last elements of this particular array. And I know that there is a hack to this, and that hack is by saying that we're just going to say that the nested array dot length, which is going to give us the total length in the actual counting. So we're just going to -1 to it. And I know we all know this hack, and this is going to return C, but you can see it's going to return CCC. But you can see that we have to write a whole lot of things, and this is where the Array.at comes into play. So with the Array.at, we don't need to do this. All we need to do is to use a negative index. So we'll just say that nested array.at, and over here we'll just simply say -1. So -1 now is simply just going to pick the first item from the end of the array down to the beginning of the array. So in this case, our -1 is going to be CCC. And when we save this, you can see over here that we're still having the CCC. So your guess is as good as mine. If I should say -2, we'll be having the BBB. It's not just for selecting the negative index. We can also use it for selecting positive index. So if I should say 1 now, that is still going to be BBB because we have 0, 1. And if I should say 0 over here, we have the A. So the next array method on my list is the Array.concat method. So let's quickly take a look at that. So over here we have, let's say, concat. So there's a concat method, and just allow me to comment out all this console.log. I'm not going to be making use of this anymore. So for the Array.concat, this is basically how it works. So let's say we have an array, let's call it const A, and in our const A, let's say that is an array of strings. So we have A, and then we have B, and then we have, let's just say we have C, and we also have another array over here. But in this array we have 1, and over here we have 2, while over here we have 3. So in this case, this is over here, the A is an array of string, while the B is an array of numbers, basically. So what we want to do is that we actually want to join the array we just want to join the both of the arrays together to produce a one new array. So the best way to do that is to pick either of these depending on how we want to position it, and we can just say .concat and they become one. So an example of this, let's say console.log, and we can say that a.concat, and I can then say b. So if I should console.log this now, you could see that we have the A, B, C, then we have the 1, 2, 3 as just one array, basically. So another way to do this here is to actually say, when we have the B, we can say B concat A. So that's just going to switch places. So in this case, we're having the 1, 2, 3 coming before the A, B, C. And this is basically one of the cleanest way of joining two arrays together. So there are also other ways of doing this, but I consider the Array.concat to be much more efficient way. I know we can actually do this by using the spread operator, and we can just simply say the spread operator A, then we can say the spread operator B, and we're just going to have similar results with that. But the Array.concat is actually a much more efficient way of doing this, and I would advise you use the Array.concat rather than always doing this, basically. So that's it for the Array.concat. So the next item on our list right now is the array copyWithin. So let's take, for example, I'm going to be using this array over here, and I would copy this. Let's say const A is equal to this array. I guess I didn't copy that, so I have to rewrite that array. So let me say we have 1, we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 as an array over here. So if I should say console.log, and now I'm going to say that A dot, and I can then, in this case, I could say that it should be copyWithin. And in the copyWithin, what I need to specify is the particular target. Where do I want to place the item that I want to copy to? So in this case, let's say I want to place the item to the beginning, and we know that the beginning is usually the index 0. So in this case, I'll just say I want to place this at the index 0. Okay, so now that I've specified where I want to place this, I need to actually state that where do I want to start copying from. So since we know that this is index 0, this index 2, this index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4. So if I want to start copying from number 5 to number 9, in that case, I would just simply say that I want to start copying from number 5, which is of index 4. So specifying this alone, and I come over here to save this, you can see what we have over here. It simply means that I have copied what is from the index 4. In this case, it is actually 5. I've copied everything here to move over to the index, to the original index of 0. So now we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then we then have 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's just more like I copied everything from 5 till the end of the array down to the beginning. But one thing you should take note of is that when you copy and you start from the index of 0, it will actually replace every element from the index of 0. So in this case, I copied 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items over here, and then it's going to replace 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items over here. So in this case, if I should copy this, let me take this out now. Let me take this out, and let's say I copied this item. So this particular item that is being copied is being replaced with the first 5 items since I am starting from the index 0. So these happens to be the first 5 items over here. So taking this now and placing this over here results to basically what we have here. So one other way of doing this is actually to specify where it's going to end. So now we have stated that it should start copying from the index of 4, but I want it to stop copying at the index of 5. So that simply means if this is the index of 4, then this is the index of 5. So that simply means it's going to copy only the number 5, and it's going to replace the number 5 with the target, which is actually the index of 0 over here. So if I should save this now, you can see that we then have 5, which is just only this, being copied and it's replacing the number 1. So we have 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, just like that. So if I want to copy 5 and 6 and I want 5 and 6 to replace 1 and 2, I just need to say that it should end at the index of 6 over here. And when I save that, you can see that we have 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. So our next array method over here is the Array.every, and this is another very useful array method. So we have an array, and this is an array of number. So sometimes when you are actually doing some programming, you have some data coming in from the database, from your backend API, and you really can tell what type of values is actually in that array. Sometimes they might be mixed. You might have an array of number, and sometimes within the number, we can have a number object or nested array. But there could be some situation whereby you want to ensure that everything in that array are of the same type. The Array.every might actually come in handy in here. So let's just paint that scenario right now. So here we want to ensure that everything in this array is actually a number, and if we have anything like a string, it should actually alert us. So what we just need to do, let's say console.log, and we're going to say that a, which is the variable here, .every. So we just need to write a callback function here, and I'm just going to call that x here. So I can say that what, in this case, I could say that if type of x is it should only return if it is equal to string. So I'm just going to say string in this case. So what's happening here is that Array.every would return a true or a false depending on whether this particular operation here is a true or a false. So if I should save this now, we can see that this is actually false because these things here are actually not equal to string. But if I should say if it is equal to a number, you can see that it gives us true. So it's giving us true because every single thing inside of this array are currently numbers. But what if I should change this particular one here, the number 5, I should change it to the string? You can see that it is giving us false just because one of the item in this array is actually not a number. So for every to return a true, all the items in this particular array must actually be true with whatsoever is in this expression that we have over here. There are also other things that we can do with this aside from just checking the type of each and every one of the items in the array. So let's say we want to ensure, let's say this is an array of age, and we basically want to ensure that every age in this array that are below the age of 18. So in order for us to do that, we can actually say we're going to remove this type off. We just need to change our expression here. We can say that if x is what is less than 18, basically. And if I should save this right now, you can see that it's returning true to us, and that's because of everything here is actually less than 18. If we want this array of age to be only for adults, we can actually say if it is greater than or equal to 18. So if it is greater than or equal to 18, let's see, when we save that now, we can see that this is false because almost everything here is actually not greater than or equal to 18. Even if we should change this particular one here to be 50, and we do this over here, you can see it is false. If we should come over here and do this again when x is less than 18 and we save this, it's still going to be false because not everybody here is actually less than 18. We can see that we have people of the age of 50 over here, and that's how the Array.every could actually come in very, very, very handy. So the next array on my list is actually the Array.fill. Let's say we have an array, let me call this 5 over here. So what the Array.fill does over here is that it actually fill up different items in an array with a specific value, basically. So we can go this way. Let's say that I want to replace every item in this particular array, and I want to replace them with a specific string for whatsoever reason. So I can just come over here and I'll say console.log, and I would say a.fill. So the first thing I need to do here is actually to specify what I want to fill up this array with. So in this case, I want to fill up this array with a sample string that is probably called sample. So I will fill this up with a string called sample. And the next thing that I want to do is to specify what part of the array do I want to start filling this up. So if I want to fill everything, then I'm going to specify from the starting point of the array. So when I save this, you can see that I now have an array of sample, sample, sample. And also, just so you know, that this particular starting point is also optional. I can decide to leave that without actually filling this up without actually specifying the starting point, and it's just going to fill up everything with that specific value. But let's say I just want to specify, I just want only the first two to actually be filled up with this particular sample string. So what I just need to do in that case is to say I want to start from the index of 1, and I want to end from the index of 0, I meant to say, from the index of 0, and I want to end this at the index of 1. So if I should save this now, you can see that we basically have just this particular one here being replaced. So that because it starts from this particular place and it ends here. But if I wanted to replace 1 and 2, all I need to do is just to say it should go to the index of 2 over there, and it ends in 2, and I have this particular 2 string here to be replaced by the sample string of sample. So that's just basically how the Array.fill actually works. So the last array method on my list for today is actually the Array.isArray. So this is actually one array method that I think it's really underrated. So let's say we have this particular array over here, and what this does is that it just tells us if this particular variable, if it's an array or not. That is basically what it does. And I know it sounds so simple, and that's why I say it's underrated. Because take a look at this. I was just going to say console.log, and if I should say Array.isArray, and I put in that particular array variable over here, when I save this, you can see it gives me true. But if I should change this into a string right now, you would see it's going to give me false. This is basically all it does, but it really comes in handy because the other alternative to this could really be misleading. And I'm going to show you the other alternative. So you can see that over here, and even in this video, I've actually used this. We can actually say that type of is actually meant to return the type of a specific data set. So in this case, this is actually an array. So if I should say type of A, the expectation is that it's going to tell me that it is an array. Just like if I should change this to be a string right now, and I say type of A, you can see that it's giving me a string. But if I should actually make this to be an array, and I should say type of A, it's not going to tell me that it is an array, because in JavaScript, an array is technically an object. So when I save this now, you can see that it is telling me that this is an object. It's not telling me that this is an array, because in JavaScript, an array is technically an object. That's just the way JavaScript works. So how then do we differentiate an array object? How do we differentiate an array object from an actual object that could just look like this? How do we differentiate between these two? The only way for us to differentiate between an actual object and an array object is for us to actually use the isArray method, basically. And that's why I said that the isArray method is usually very underrated. So if you are receiving some response from a backend API and you want to be sure that that particular response or that particular stuff data is an array before you start performing whatsoever logic you want to write, you just simply need to use the Array.isArray method to check if it is an array. If it returns a true, you go ahead and do what you want to do. If it returns a false, you go ahead and do your else or whatsoever you need to do when it is not an array. So I hope that you actually find this particular method useful. So let's just do this again, Array.isArray A, and we can see that that is basically true over here. So I hope you find each and every one of this array method that I have just discussed in this video super useful, and I really hope you use them when next you have a need to use them. So that's all for now. I'll see you all in the next video, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Goodbye for now.